Okay, Chapter 12, Adobe Rush. In this chapter, we're going to practice some key concepts in Photoshop, like creating images with transparent backgrounds, the magic wand tool, doing a little bit more of that kind of creative masking, and then we're also going to look at type on a path, which is honestly kind of terrible in Photoshop, but you don't always want to open up Illustrator where it's not so bad. So we'll be doing that here in Photoshop. Then we're going to use what we create to make a short video in another program called Adobe Rush, which is a kind of heavily pared down version of Adobe Premiere, and honestly works pretty well for what it is. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So navigate to wherever your files are at. So we'll go to Open. Let's do the ones on my desktop so I don't wreck my master files. Here we go. We want Chapter 1 Doggo, and we'll go ahead and click Open. Now, step 1, of course, is to remove the background. And removing the background, we can try the Remove Background button, and we can see that it leaves quite a bit of green in here. So let's undo that. Let's go ahead and switch to one of our Smart Select tools like Quick Select, and we can see that we will start having the same problem as I start trying to grab the background. Similarly, I could try Select Subject. Select Subject leaves that in there as well. So like our kind of quick selection tools just aren't going to be able to grab the dog or the green background very well. So let's do it another way. So we have a very old tool called the Magic Wand tool. And what the Magic Wand tool does is that any pixel that you click on, it will grab any pixels that are pretty close in appearance. So like in this case, we have this nice solid green background, a little bit of aliasing edging going around it. And the Magic Wand tool basically is the perfect tool for this. How it works is we have our familiar 4 buttons up at the top: New, Add, Remove, and Intersect. We can tell it how big of a point sample we want to make. So like, is it based off of a single pixel or like an averaging of a square of pixels based on the sizings? Then we also have the tolerance, how far away or how different, can the pixels be for it to be included in the selection? Is it going to try to deal with that anti-aliasing? Contiguous or contiguous means that do they have to touch or not touch? And then sample all layers, I think, is pretty obvious. So in this case, the default settings for this will work just fine. And I will click on the background, and just like magic, I have a very good selection for that dog. And I will go ahead and mask it out. Now I selected the background, so when I clicked out mask, it masked out the dog. So I need to Command or Control I to switch my mask. Similarly, I could have just inverted my selection, whichever way works just fine. I'm going to relabel this Doggo. Oops, not Doffo. Doggo. And you know what? Let's reset our workspace to be in the default one. So I'm going to come up here to the top right, Essentials, and I'm going to do Reset Essentials. And it kind of sets us back up into our base setting. Next, we want to add a circle for our background to kind of help start creating our logo. So let's go ahead and grab our ellipse tool. And with the ellipse tool active, I'm going to draw a circle about either 1720 pixels in width or about 24.4, depending on how you have your ruler set up here at the top. So I'm going to start clicking and dragging, and then I will hold down the Alt-Option key to draw it from center. And then I'm going to hold down Shift key to make it a perfect circle, and I am going to drag out until I get a circle about the right size that I want. So remember, just like with selections, I can use the space bar to move this as I am drawing. And let's see, 24.4, that looks pretty good right there. Next, I'm going to drag it to be below my doggo layer, and I'm just going to go ahead and label this Circle BG. With my Circle BG, I want to add a stroke and a background. So over here for my appearance, I'll click on Fill, and I'm going to click on our little gradient box so I can get my color picker. In my color picker, I'm going to do an RGB value of R106, G114, blue 179. I get a nice blue, and I'll click OK. And you can see how that's kind of a nice color complement to the golden color of that dog. Similarly, I'll grab stroke, and I'll click on the little gradient box again. And we've got some more RGB values coming. We're going to do red 54, green 56, and blue 76 for a nice darker blue to kind of offset the brighter one that we have going there. Now that stroke right now is a little too thin to see. So where it says 1 px for my stroke thickness, I'm going to go ahead and do 75, giving me a nice little attractive framing around this dog. Now we're a little bit too close to the top, so I want to shift this down. So I'm going to make both layers active. So I've got one of them active. I'll hold the shift key and click onto the other one. So both layers are active. I will hit V or click on the move tool up here in the top left. And I'm going to drag down, and I'll drag down just enough so that it's no longer touching up here. We're going to keep adjusting the position as we're working on this dog anyway. Make sure that the collar does not dip below the bottom of your frame though, because that's what we're about to kind of work with to create our logo. Okay, next let's go ahead and put the dog into the circle. Now, frustratingly, to make this selection, like if I just, command click on this selection, we can see that I get one based on the actual shape and not the stroke. Similarly, if we grab that magic wand tool that we just used and we turn off sample all layers so it will only affect the background circle, we can see that it says no. For whatever reason, the magic wand tool does not understand vector shapes. So let's switch to the quick select tool. And if I paint over that blue background, and let's just hide the dog layer for a minute so it's a little bit easier. If I paint over that blue background, the quick select tool can get that selection pretty easily. Next, I'm going to make the dog mask active, and I want to fill in black. And if I filled in black right now, I'd actually hide the dog rather than the bottom portion of the dog. So I need to invert my selection. So on your keyboard, hit Command or Control Shift I, or click the invert selection button down here in the contextual taskbar to have the other area now selected. Then either click the paint bucket tool or hit Command Shift Delete on your keyboard to fill in black. Then I will drop my active selection, deselect. Now for our logo, I think it would look pretty rad if we had kind of a little bit of a layering effect where this collar dips down below the edge of this area. So we need to make a selection for this collar and then modify our mask based on that selection. So I'm going to right click on my mask and I'm going to pick Disable Mask. This keeps the mask without deleting it, but temporarily removes it from view and effect, allowing us to work with the area that was underneath it. I'll hit W on my keyboard, or if it's already active, I don't have to, and I'll grab the quick select tool again, and I'm going to paint over the dog's collar. Notice that when we did this, that the quick select tool again failed to really dig up into these corners. We're not going to care in this case because the only part of the selection we actually care about is this little bit that will dip below the edge of our circle. I will right click on my layer mask again to re-enable it. And this time, instead of filling black, I am going to fill white. And we can see that that reveals the mask. I mean, not the mask. It modifies the mask to reveal the collar, making a cooler looking logo. Okay, next we want to add text to our design. So we want Happy Doggo going across the top. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the text tool. And I'm going to use the font Elfon. So up here at the top, I'm going to start typing in Elfarn. If you do not have it available, you will need to go to Adobe Fonts and add it. With Elfon active, I'm going to come over to my text size, and I'm going to do 350. And then I want to modify my tracking, which I don't have access to up here, but I might over in Properties. I don't have an active text tool yet, so I can't do that. So I'll need to go up to Window, and I'll go to Character. And in Character, I will set my tracking to be minus, what do I want? Minus 20, excuse me. That'll tighten up the character spacing a little bit. Finally, I want center paragraph alignment. If you don't already have center paragraph alignment, click center paragraph alignment. Now, to be able to type on a path, I'm going to make the circle active. We can see that there's now a blue line going around this, and this represents a line that I can type on using the text tool. So as I'm mousing over this, notice how I have a circle, I have a squiggle line, and then I have the normal box that we're used to seeing. A normal box will make the text tool work like we've had the entire book. When I mouse over this line and I get the squiggle, that means it will put the text on the line and wrap it around the circle in this case. And if I click inside the circle, it would fill the interior shape of this with the text. So mouse over roughly center until you see this line and click once. And start typing in Happy Doggo. I'm going to go ahead and select my text. You can see that it ate my size because I forgot to hit enter when I typed in 350. So I'll type in 350 again, and I have my large happy doggo text. Then I want to modify its color. So I'm going to click either here, here, or here. Notice that we have a tracking symbol now here in properties since we have an active text tool. And I'm going to click on color, and I am going to put in for red 192, and in green I'm going to do 117, and in blue I'm going to do 36, giving me a nice orange based on the orange from my dog. In fact, I could get this color. I just sampled off of the dog earlier, which you can actually click anywhere on here to sample your color. So you don't actually have to type in a color. You can actually just click on these to grab it. And you can see that I got the color from right here because there's my 192, 117, 36 again. And we'll click OK. And then I will click the check mark to say I'm happy with my text. Now immediately we can see that my design has ended up a little too big. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the crop tool and expand out my design enough that I have enough room for the text that I've added, and go pretty far off to the edge because we are actually going to add a stroke here in a second to our text to kind of help offset it from what we're looking at. All right, let's go ahead and add a stroke to our text. So I'm going to come down to the FX menu with the stroke layer active, and I'm going to pick stroke. And in stroke, I'm going to set the size to be 40 pixels. I'm going to set the position to outside if it's not already there. Blend mode I'll leave alone, but color I do want to change, so I'll click on the box to change the color. And for my RGB values, I'm going to do 54, 56, and 77. Spoiler, this is the same color as the stroke, so just like with the other one, I could click here or I can click here and just actually pick that color directly up and click OK. Now we can see there's a slight flaw in here where it's a little bit bigger than it should because we can see that it's overlapping down into the other area. So I could actually bump this down to like 30, what would be 35? Yeah, 35 gets it almost perfectly clear. In our case, I'm just going to leave this at 40. If I was doing professional work, I'd probably put the type on a path tool slightly bigger, and then I'd go in and fill in these kind of little ugly dots in here, but it gets a little too much into the weeds for what we're doing in this book. All right, let's go ahead and save this as a PSD as our master file. So I'll click save, throw this on my desktop, and I'm going to do Doggo Logo because I like that name. And now I have my logo. Now to export this out, we're going to do some resizing to make it fit a little bit better into the other design. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to Layer, and I'm going to pick Merge Visible to make it easier to work with everything all at once. Then I'm going to Command click my Happy Doggo layer preview. I will turn on and then turn back off. I will turn off and then turn back on the crop tool, and it will automatically snap to my selection. So it will make it'll make the canvas as small as possible while still having all of the content in here, so I don't have extra space around it. Let's resize it down because it's right now enormous, and we just don't need it that enormous for a video. So I'm going to come up to Image, and I'm going to go to Image Size. And let's bring this down a little bit. I'm going to switch to pixels, and I'm going to switch my resolution to be 72. And then I'm going to set my width. We'll do height because we'll set the height to be 1500, and that looks pretty good. And I'll click OK. So we just threw away a bunch of extra pixels. So the last thing you'd want to do is click a normal save. We're going to do save as a copy here in a minute. So let's go ahead and actually save it. So I'm going to do save a copy, and I'm going to make two versions of it. I want to make a JPEG, and I want to make actually I'm going to move this JPEG in a different spot. Let's put you here in these Photoshop files, and this will make sense here in a second because we're going to add all these to Rush, and it's easier if I just put them all together right now. And then I'm going to save a PNG as well. So again, notice that I'm doing this from the drop down. I am not typing in PNG up here. You'll just make a corrupted file if you do that. All right, with that, we are done in Photoshop, so you should now launch Rush. Okay, let's start in Adobe Rush. For some reason, it gives us a splash screen. I'm not sure why they give us a splash screen the first time we open this. Splash screens haven't been like a good thing in like a decade, especially in web design, but they give us one anyway. So let's click Let's Go and never see that again. And let's take a look at this main asset screen. So this is how we're going to first get started bringing in our documents. So down here under project name, we'll go ahead and do chapter 12 Doggo video. We could click this little gear icon to set up our ratio right off the start. For now, we'll leave that alone because it will do it based on the videos that we're going to import here in a minute. Over here on the left, we can access to wherever our files are stored at. In this case, I'll just go ahead and do desktop and workshop files and chapter 12. And this gives us everything from the book. We only want some of these though, so let's go ahead and get started and grab the ones we need. So we want the audio file, Dance of the Comedians. We want our JPEG, our PNG. We'll skip this one because we don't need it. And we'll need these 2 photos. And then we want these 3 videos. The rest of this is in here for if you want to use them for the do-it-yourself practice. Once you have those 8 images active, go ahead and click Create to have them loaded up into our workspace. A little bit of stuff about our workspace. Up here at the top left, we click the home screen. It takes us back to home and where we can make a new project, or we can click on our existing project to continue to edit it. We have an edit and share mode. Share is how you get stuff out of Adobe Rush. There is no save in Adobe Rush because it just automatically knows where you're at and will save it for you, kind of like if you're playing Minecraft and you turn the game off when the creeper's about to blow your chest up, but you log back in and, well, there goes your chest. Rush is the same way. Okay, now we can also control what assets we have available to us by coming up here and going to add, and we can add additional stuff for our video tracks or audio tracks or whatever. Now, anything that is currently available to us in the particular project will be in this little file storage box, so we can see everything that we currently added, and I can remove from here and still have it up here, allowing us to store things up here, making it easier for us if we're doing particularly long or complicated video edits. Moving down, we have the scissors, which allows us to split a track, which is kind of terrifying, because it used to be like, back in the day, you would have like a big thing of film out and you would literally take a pair of scissors and you would cut it to splice in more stuff in between it. You'd use like this glue and this kind of weird clamp thing. It was something. Then we also have our duplicate button, which allows us to duplicate, and trash, which allows us to trash. And then we have expand audio that allows us to edit audio in a video track separate from each other. But we're going to go ahead and collapse that back down, although we'll use that later. We have a button that makes us look a little bit like Photoshop layers, where we can lock and mute and hide, just like in Photoshop, except, mute is new to us. Over here on the right, we have graphic ads, like if we want to do like text overlays and other fun stuff like that. We have our effects, which allows us to do things like transitions to soften the jump between things. Like I could add a dissolve to move that a little bit more attractively. Same thing with pan and zoom and auto reframe. Then we have our preset colors, which allow us to change the appearance of our image. We have full control of that under Edit with sliders that look pretty similar to what we saw in Adobe Camera Raw, except way fewer sliders. We have a duration tool, which allows us to set a duration of a clip. Although, however, when we do set that duration, it will ramp up the speed, making it go faster or slower. It can be really handy, though, for just manually setting it for still images, since there's nothing to ramp up or speed down. We also have some audio controls where it will try to detect what kind of audio we are currently using, and then we'll have single button clicks to try to fix any problems. Those single button clicks are honestly a lot like what we would see in Photoshop single button clicks. So like the remove background button, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That's the same way you can view these. If you need to do more advanced audio editing, you'd pop open Premiere, Audition, or a different standalone program. Then we also have crop and rotate, and it's exactly what you would assume with that name. It's crop and rotate. Finally, in our interface, we have this lower section and our preview monitor. So it's called a preview monitor because it's just a preview of what your video should look like after you export it. To make it run a little bit faster, often these will be not as clear as your actual final rendered video. This area down here is called our timeline, and in our timeline we have audio tracks and video tracks and image tracks that will then make up the totality of our video. This little blue marker right here is called our playhead, and it will show us where we're at in our video and also show us where this is in our preview monitor. Now, as we move this, we've got two sets of numbers. We have our total duration, and then we have our current playhead position. These are in minutes, seconds, and frames. Now, this frame count is going to cap out at 29 seconds with our current setting, so do not expect this small number to ever pass 29. We have a couple of controls underneath our preview monitor. We have moved to the end or start of our current, moved to the end or start of the closest track. We have moved by a single frame, and then we also have play. We can enter a full screen mode, or we can loop our playback using these two buttons, and we can also change the aspect ratio to match a different targeted output. So like, am I looking at this on a computer or am I looking at this on a phone? Whew. And then finally, we have our audio volume over here kind of telling us where we're at in available audio volume space. All right, let's do a little bit of editing. So let's start by reordering our tracks. To make it easier to reorder, let's zoom in so that our video tracks match the width of our screen to make it a little bit easier to click and drag what we need to. So I have a little scroll bar down here, and if I click at the end of the scroll bar, I can zoom in and out by changing the width of that scroll bar. So go ahead and adjust your scroll bar so this matches about the width of your available space. Let's click on our first image, which is this happy doggo image, and click on the second one, and we can see that there is nothing behind them besides white or black. Now, I want this to overlay our video eventually. So to do that, we're going to do the same thing we would do in Photoshop and modify our layer order. I'm going to click and drag up, and I'm going to click and drag up. Come on, you can do it. Oh, I see. It's locked to the audio. So click and drag it over and then drag the audio over, and that will unlock it from the audio. I'm not sure why it does that sometimes. And if we drag it up, we can now see we've got our two images separate from each other. Now, if I click on one image, we can see the background through it. And if we click on the other one, we see white. So the white one was that JPEG, and this one is our PNG with that transparent background. Go ahead and make the one with the white background active and hit delete to remove it from our design. Now, if we come over here again, we can see through it. Let's continue to modify our order. So we want the one where it's the dog sleeping in its bowl first. So I'll click and drag this over. If your audio moves, go ahead and move it back into place along with the dog thing. Sometimes this will attach itself to things. Then we want to grab our one where the dog is stuck in the fence, and we'll drag it over so our two images are now here. So we've got dog bowl with logo over it. We've got stuck in fence, dumb face, worried dog because they got caught chewing the carpet, and then we have a very long audio track down here. Let's resize this logo so it makes a little bit more sense. So make the logo active and come over to the crop tool, and we want to start with fit. And we can see that actually does a pretty good job, but maybe it's a little too big. So why don't we actually come down here to width, and let's do 130. And that actually fits onto the screen a little bit better. Now let's adjust the length of each one of these clips to get our video length down to 30 seconds. So we'll make the puppy active, and I'm going to click and drag the playhead to be at the 5-second mark. Now, instead of trying to get it perfectly by clicking and dragging, I can also use my mouse to nudge by single frames. So I'll just get the count close and then move my mouse. I can change the length of my clips by mousing over the end until I see the arrow and then clicking and dragging over. Note that I can't make it longer than it already is, but I can always make it shorter, and then I can bring that back, which is kind of really handy in these kind of video editing programs. So now I have a 5-second long video of my puppy sleeping in its bowl. Let's do the same thing for stuck in the fence, except we will do it at the 13-second mark. So again, I'll just get it close and nudge it over with my mouse, and on my mouse keyboard, and then I will click and drag over to the 13-second mark. And what it's doing here is it's snapping to the 13-second playhead, making this really easy. All right, let's look at another way that's a pretty easy way to adjust the length of still clips. So like this isn't a video, but a still now. So if we come up to the odometer or speedometer, whatever you want to call it, we can just straight up change the clip duration to 2 seconds. manually that way, rather than having to try to calculate it out. Same thing with this one. We'll set this one to 2 seconds. So we've got dumb grass, dumb water, and now we just need to work on this one. Now I want this one to drop it down till we're at 30 seconds precisely in length. And I can do that by coming up and switching this to be precisely 13 seconds. Now we're exactly 30 seconds total in our length. So like here's the end of the playhead here at 30 seconds. However, notice that this says 180% now, meaning that this clip now plays at 180% speed, which is quite fast. Like it'll be a little garbled if we tried it right now. Okay, next, let's go ahead and take a look at splitting a track so we can move our pictures in. So like sequentially, it would be more fun to have these splitting this track. So let's move our playhead counter to the 22-second mark. And I'll just dial it in place with the arrow keys. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click those terrifying scissors, splitting this in half. Then I can click and drag these to be between those, oops, I don't want to lengthen it, between those two clips. Let's also adjust the length of the music. So I'm going to scroll all the way over. Actually, first let's snap this to my playhead. There we go, end of my playhead. I did that by doing the jump. Let's come over here and let's drag this all the way over. In fact, actually, you know what, this might be easier zoomed out because this does not scroll very well sideways for whatever reason while you're dragging, which you'd think it would be good at, but it's not. I'm going to temporarily close this and I'm going to adjust the width of my timeline so I can see everything at once. Here, just throw you over there. That'll make this easy. All the way over. And that looks about the right width for my timeline. That's going to make editing on here a lot easier than kind of having to zoom in and out all the time. Now go ahead and play the video. I'm not going to play it right now because you can play it on your own screen. I'm not going to burn video time on that. And as you play it, you'll be able to see that the video is kind of jumpy. Like stuff just kind of appears and teleports into the screen, and it's kind of unpleasant. And it doesn't sound very well. So let's address the transitions, and then let's address the music. So I'm going to make the puppy dog logo active, and if I come up to my transitions and I add slide down on it, when we play it now, we can see that it slides down from, oops, no, let's do wipe down, not slide down. Wipe down, there we go. And now we can see that it kind of wipes in and out of place, which is kind of a really nice, attractive little touch. Now we can do similar things to our videos by adding in more transitions. So at the start of this puppy video, let's add a fade to black. So this will fade up from black. And so like as we go over to it, we can see that it dips down in black. And I think we can get the timing a little bit better on it. So we could either move our playhead to the 1 second mark, or if this is still active, it's highlighted in orange, I can come up to my transitions and set this to 1 second. So now that when this wipes in, once it's wiped in, the puppy starts fading in and then it wipes back out. Now between these two clips, we have a harsh jump, and I can address that harsh jump with a dissolve, which will translate these two pictures together. Now, unfortunately, it kept that 1 second, and I don't really want that as 1 second. So I'm going to drop that back down to half a second or 0.5. Now, a fast way to do this rather than click and drag is I can make a clip active, and I can click dissolve. I can make a click, let's just make this one actually active and click dissolve, and let's make this one active and click dissolve, and we can see that adds it to all of my clips. Now, I don't want it here at the end. Instead, I want to fade to black. So I clicked on it and hit delete, and I'm going to drag a fade to black. And similar to the one at the start, we're going to change the length, and this one we're going to change to 2 seconds to do kind of a nice fade out at the end of our 30-second video. Whew. Okay, let's do some work on the sound. So we have Dance of the Comedians down here, which is a 1924 recording, pre-copyright. So I'm not pre-copyright, old enough to be in the public domain, which is a godsend for me making a video. Music copyright is a nightmare, but it sounds like garbage. But we can clean it up some, not all the way, by coming over to our audio section with it active, and we'll go ahead and leave it at voice, although theoretically it would be music. And in here, we're going to click auto volume, balance sound, and reduce background noise. And this reduce background noise is really going to pull out a bunch of that scratchiness. And again, I can't really stress enough that these are hammer buttons. Like it's a hammer to a problem. And if the hammer doesn't fix it, then it's worse. So like if you need to do better sound work, you will have to get into a program with more sound controls like actual Adobe Premiere or Adobe Audition. Moving on, we want to address the sound in the rest of the clips. So to access their sound, we need to expand that audio. Oops, we need the video clips active in order to expand their audio. So expand, please. And so we can see that right here we have the snoring puppy and it's a little quiet. So why don't we turn it all the way up so we can really hear those sounds of it snoring. This one, we don't even want to hear the sound. So we could either click mute to remove it, or you can right click on this and do separate out audio and then just delete that audio clip. Either method works fine. So whichever way gives you a giggle works well. Finally, we want to add some more transitions. Now, if we look, we have video transitions that got automatically applied to our audio transitions since they were merged together. Like we hadn't separated the audio out yet. But our Dance of the Comedians down here does not have any audio transitions applied. So let's come up to the transitions menu and let's grab a fade to black. And I clicked on it, so it went ahead and added it. But let's lengthen the length of these fades. So I want this first fade at 1. And then I want this second fade at 2. And now our audio will match our video fade, creating a very nice audio and visual end and start to our tracks. Finally, we want to do a little bit of color work. So like if we look at this puppy image and we look at this image and this image and this image, these are all daylight images. So the quality of the color in them is quite good. But if we compare it to the color quality of the dog stuck in the gate, the quality just isn't there visually. Now, we can't bring all of it back, but we can make some adjustments to kind of help match that appearance by going to our Edits menu, going to Edit, and then going to Exposure. In Exposure, let's bump it up by 1/4 of a stop, so 0.25. Let's go down to Temperature, and let's do -36, and let's do Tint 6 for some very slight adjustments to help match. So when we click this on and off up here, we can see that it is a dramatic change, even if at first it didn't feel that way. That helps it make fit into the scene quite a bit more strongly. Our final step is to actually get it out of Adobe Rush. To do so, we'll go up to Share, and we'll go to Local, although you could go into one of these to directly upload it to one of these websites. It doesn't have quite the same number of upload features as going to the website itself, so I tend to export local and then upload directly. Go ahead and pick your location. So you'll click here, and in my case, I'll just do desktop. I'm going to label it Chapter 12 Doggo Video. Yours might say Sequence 1. When exporting, make sure to pick Save To first and then put in the file name. I have found it sometimes deletes out your file name after if you change where it's going to, but not always. Now, if I was going to upload this to YouTube, I would just pick the YouTube preset relating to the resolution of my video. So probably 1080 would be fine for this one. Or like if we were doing like the ones I'm doing for these instructional videos, we're doing 4K Ultra, and we can see that these end up being quite large videos, even at only 30 seconds in length. To make this shareable by like a phone or email, so like text message, we would, instead of picking one of these presets, come over to resolution, and we would pick 720. And we would pick quality low to get this down at 10 megabytes, making this quite emailable or textable. So like most emails will let you do 25 megabytes of attachment, so 10 is well in that. You'll then come down and click export. Depending on the strength of your computer, the export will go slow or fast. Same thing with the size of the video you're making and how long the video is. Then you click done, and you are ready to view your video. Hopefully this was fun, and hopefully this textbook has been very instructive for you to learn Adobe Photoshop.
What is this? What did you do, Lee? Did you chew the carpet? Did you chew the carpet? Okay, I understand. Okay. Poor Lee. Oh, poor Lee.